I've UV mapped this thing. It's really just a made-up object, but it'll work for us. And it has a lot of polygons right now. You can see if I go over to my polygon counter, it's got, let's count real polygons. It's got 784 four-sided polygons in it right now with a few tries. And it was made just by bullying some pieces together, and then I've soft selected the center to kind of squeeze it together. So we'll be able to see a low poly and a high poly version of this when we're done. But remember that number because it's going to come down. And I've also UV mapped this. So if I hop over here to my final stack, I'm going to delete this edit poly off the top. You'll see we've unwrapped it. You can see the seams there. And if I go to edit this, you'll see that it has been completely unwrapped. Now this is its original texture sitting back there. You'll see that in a second. Right now it's got a checker map on it. So it's been UV unwrapped. And at this point we used to be able to weren't able to go back in and manipulate the mesh without screwing the texture up, which has always been a problem. But now you can. It's called Preserve UVs. I'm going to drop this down and put an edit mesh on top of this. Sorry, an edit poly, not an edit mesh. An edit poly. There we go. And I'll go ahead and select an edge loop here to show you how this works. I'm going to zoom in. My edges are not real easy to see on this object, but I've got this edge right here. And if I go to, I'll tell you what, let me change the coloring on this real quick and see if I can come up with something that, will show the edges a little bit better. Let's do a lighter color here. Okay, that's a little bit better. You can see the edges a little bit better. I'm going to get an edge loop, and you can see that loop now goes all the way around this this piece. There it is there. And normally, if we wanted to merge this edge loop or weld it to the one next to it to get rid of some polygons, you can see it's going to distort the texture coordinates. But we can stop it from doing that by scrolling down here under Edit Geometry, Edit Poly, and I have edges, which is what I usually use, but it's also located in some of the other Edit Poly types. I'm going to click this Preserve UVs button, and now watch what happens when I move that. See how it kind of swims through the UV layout? I'm deforming the mesh because I'm getting rid of some polygons, but it doesn't screw up my texturing. Now there's one other neat little thing we can do here. Under Preserve UVs, I can drop this down to say Edge under Constraints, and it will not go any farther than the edge next to it. Now that crazy black stuff you're seeing is when these merge together, they're going to cause that little black stuff because I've got some polygons smashed together here. But I can go under Edit Poly, Vertex. I'm just going to grab all the vertexes in my object. Well, here, we'll just grab all of them. All the vertexes in my object and go down to Weld. And now I've welded that together. You see, originally I had 776. I now have 736. Because I've welded this piece together. You can see it's deformed the shape a little. And I didn't screw up my UVs. So that's a pretty neat little trick to do if you're trying to get a high poly object to be a low poly object. I'm going to do another here while I'm talking. And you'll see the process again. Preserve UVs, Edge Constraint. I'm going to move this one back. It's going to snap into that one. See how it's moving along the surface with that edge constraint on? That's the important part. Vertex. We'll grab all the vertexes there. Go to Weld. It welds it together. We haven't screwed up our UVs at all. I'll do a couple more here, and we'll really knock down the polygons in this guy. Same thing again, same settings. So our settings are still set down here. You can push this button under settings, and if you had different texture channels, they'd be listed here, and you could say which channels you wanted it to affect. We usually only use one channel with video games, but you could do more. And then I'm going to go to weld. Actually, let's go to vertex first. There we go, vertex, and then weld. It's welded those together. You can see it didn't affect my texture mapping at all. Let's do one more loop here. Loop that. We'll move this guy over till we see the ugly brown stuff there, or black stuff. Go here. All my vertices are already selected. Weld. And we're done. And now we've gotten rid of all those polygons up there at the top. We only have, 1, 2, 3 loops of polygons now. I can even manipulate what I have left. So I can grab this loop and I can scoot it over if I want to even this out a little bit. So you can see my profile now is a little bit more evened out. And I never changed my UV mapping. If we go over to count our polygons again, you can see that I've got 674, so I've gotten rid of about 100 polygons, if I remember right. Now I don't remember how many I had to start with. But we've gotten rid of a lot of polygons, and we've manipulated this thing. Let's do this piece right here, just so you can kind of see how this works on a different type of object. I'll grab this loop here. So that's my edge loop. I'm going to scroll on down here, make sure everything's set up. Preserve UVs, edge. In this case, I'm going to use scale. See how it's scaling down? And now we've butted right up against that other piece. Go to vertices, weld, and you can see we didn't change the UVs at all. I'll do this one here, one last one. There we go, loop. I'm going to scale this out. See how it's scaling along the object, so it's going to snap right there. And I'll go to vertices, weld, and I never changed my UV mapping. So this one's low poly, this one's high poly. And now if I drop on the original map, this was my map, and you can see that if I zoom out, you can see that this one's pretty much the same as that one. Nothing got changed up here. The original picture, the original render is the high poly render here you're going to see in a second. And you can see that it's not changed my texturing at all. Here's the low poly version, here's the high poly version, unchanged, and my mapping's the same. And if I go back down to my my unwraps, actually let's just put a new unwrap on there so I don't mess that up. Here's my original, or my unwraps, and if we go to edit, you'll see that here's the low poly version. Let me zoom in here. Here's the lower poly version, here's the higher poly version, and nothing really got changed along the way. My bitmap is an odd size, so that's why everything's kind of squished there. Let me fix that real quick. There we go. That's my custom bitmap, and we need that one. There we go. That's a little bit better fit. Turn off tile bitmap. That's what the mapping really looks like. And you can see that it just crawled along the mapping coordinates that I already had. You can see it's a much lower poly version here that we're left with. So a very neat way to make LOD versions of your model, or just manipulate it after you've applied the texture. It's a really nice way to work. So remember, when you just turn that off. Just grab the edge, make sure Preserve UVs, edge is on, and see how I can move my UVs around and it's not affecting the texture at all. Okay, so that's Preserve UVs. Very nifty. Remember where it is because you're probably going to want to